You're listening to the Business and Tech Podcast, your go-to source for all the tech needs in your business. Now, here's your host, tech guru, and CEO, Jack Garzella.
Welcome to the Business and Tech Podcast. I'm Jack Garzella, and I created this podcast to entertain you, but also to help you in your career with your business and technical challenges. This podcast will focus on entertaining you, number one, but also giving you solutions from seasoned experts in their various fields of focus that we'll cover on these podcasts, both on the business side as well as the technical side, and really how to pull those two together to be very successful with the growth of your business and your projects and your corporations. Now, for this podcast, I'm just going to introduce myself, the podcast format, our goals, ways you can contribute, give us feedback, find additional related content that we'll be producing with these, as well as giving us ideas for interviews and other topics, masterminds, content that you would like to see us deliver. Okay, again, like I said, my number one goal is to entertain you. If you're not having fun, things get very, very boring very fast. But I will also help you succeed with your business and tech challenges in your career by helping you avoid the mistakes that I have made in my career, others have made in their career. We've been very successful, but you don't get there by a straight line of everything just working. You have to learn, you have to experiment, but you also have to deliver over time to be successful. We'll be also interviewing celebrities like George Ross, Wayne Root, JT Fox, and others in our first 5 or 10 episodes, just to get things kicked off in a fun and entertaining manner, but also many senior executives of vendors as well as businesses. Sometimes I will also be interviewing managers, directors, and some day-to-day staff people just to get their perspectives, whether they be in IT, sales, or marketing organizations. It'll be a wide-ranging podcast. We'll cover the best practices and lessons learned through all of our collective experience, and we'd love to have your feedback on your experiences. Okay, so the first thing that I had to ask is, why create a podcast? Aren't there enough out there? Well, over the pandemic, I was at a decision point in my career. Do I take another CIO, CTO job, another CEO, VP of sales type job? And I've done all of those for small and large companies. Or do I go a different path? Pandemic gave me time to look at that, some extra time to figure some things out. And I decided I want to give back to people in business and IT organizations as much as I can. So I listened to a lot of podcasts, but I couldn't find one that mixed the business strategy with the day-to-day needs of the business users, with the technical challenges and solutions to deliver that. So that is what this podcast is going to focus on. We will not be covering how to be great coders. We will not be covering how to do an Instagram hashtag. Those things are more detailed. We're going to be staying at a mid-level, not so much a high level, but kind of a mid-level implementation and strategies. But some of our content, related content, we'll deliver to you guys through our club and through our YouTube channels and stuff. We'll go into more detail on various topics, both on the business and the technical side. Okay, like I said, we've got some great interviews already lined up for the first 10 episodes. I'll be referencing those shortly. Many of you might have already listened to them because this podcast, a lot of people don't go back to the first podcast. They'll listen to the latest one that came out first. So hopefully you've done that. And if you haven't, welcome to the podcast and go listen to those after this. All right, my quick background. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started several companies, the first of which was when I was in high school. And I've also had senior executive roles in high growth startups, established growth companies, as well as corporations and vendors like Oracle and Teradata. In those companies, I moved up the ladder very quickly by delivering systems that businesses could use, using my sales experience that I learned early in my career, as well as my communication skills, which have been the number one thing that's allowed me to be successful. I'm a commercial pilot, but I don't fly for the airlines. I'm a scuba diver as well, but I don't get in to do that scuba diving too much here in Utah. I do fly a bit, but I do love skiing and mountain biking. I live near the Salt Lake area on a mountain at about 6,200 feet, so I can be close to those activities. All right, let's step back for 1 minute. I started out technical. So I have a computer science degree out of Purdue. My first company was a software firm that I started in high school that automated retail computer stores, primarily appliance stores. Back then, you had a lot of independent appliance stores. You didn't have the big box chains. I did small business solutions, and it might sound a little crazy, but I also did a school food distribution program for the state of Indiana that managed the distribution of their school food, so boxes of chicken, boxes of whatever, and getting those in storage, charging for the storage, getting them onto a truck, shipping them, and all the logistics around that. Did that while I was in high school and then my early years in college, which kind of paid for my pilot's license that I got at Purdue back then. Okay, finally, after college, my first company I started was DSI. I had over 1 million in revenue in the first year there, and that was pre-internet. So, we had to actually work for it and do real work. I couldn't just pop up a website and sell a widget. And then over time, I've had various CIO, VP of IT roles, as well as sales and marketing and CEO roles for growth companies and startups and things like that. The largest that I've run, I believe, by the numbers, would be about $120 million division for a large IT vendor. I had a lot of fun in my career, a lot of startups, a lot of high growth stuff. I was in the dot-com boom. I was right in the middle of the dot-com boom. I was speaking at various conferences, in front of 400, 1,000, 2,000 people. I think the largest I ever did was 5,000 people. And I traveled the world. So I did speaking in Japan and Korea, over in Australia, all over Europe, and of course the US. All right, finally, because of my communication skills, that's what's allowed me really to accelerate my career. And I want all you technical guys out there that might listen to learn how to communicate. If you're an introvert like I was, didn't like to talk to people, sit in the corner, learn to communicate. You'll make more money over time. But that doesn't mean you got to be a bubbly person. Just means you got to communicate a little bit. Now, on the business side, just the opposite. You got to realize that most of you are right-brainers, unless you're in finance maybe, and you're dealing with a bunch of left-brainers in coding. So we're going to talk about left brain, right brain, and how to put that stuff together when you're working on your projects. Okay, so that is basically how I made my career, was communicating with the business, communicating with IT, and being able to design those solutions and bring those together, or fix. In many cases, I was brought in to fix systems that couldn't scale, systems that had major problems, and we were able to deliver those solutions. So we'll talk about that, ground up solutions versus fixing and or enhancing existing systems. So let's talk a little bit about our first set of guests. Some of you may have already listened to some of those episodes, and that's great. In our first set of episodes, we were lucky and honored enough to get George Ross, JT Fox, and Wayne Root, just to mention a few. You may not recognize those names at first, but I bet you know of them, and I'll explain a little bit of who they are in just a minute. But we'll also be interviewing a couple of my go-to business and technology peers that have helped me provide solutions along the way. Kim Spenchen will be our first interview. He's had many roles and a very successful career. Most of you might recognize the company that he ran for a long time as CIO at MGM Studios until they were purchased by Sony. But that's where I first met him, actually, was there. And we did a lot of projects together. He's invested in my companies. We've co-invested in other companies. Kim's a really, really experienced guy. I'll also have Rob and David on, two of my best go-to technologists. They can take them to a demo. I can leave them in the meeting, go take a call or whatever I got to do sometimes. And I'll come back to the room and they'll have the solution figured out. So it's great. They can communicate, but they are coders at heart. They're 80% plus coders versus working with business people. All right. Anyway, so I'm back to the celebrities. If you don't know who George Ross is, and I'm surprised to find out how many people under 30, 35 don't know him, but that's okay. His name just doesn't pop off unless maybe you're 40, 45 and you watched a TV show called The Apprentice. He was one of the judges on The Apprentice. And if you've never seen The Apprentice, it's where 8 or 10 different contestants would design a sales and marketing campaign for a business or a division of a business. And then they would be handpicked, if they won, to be in Donald Trump's businesses. He has many, many businesses back then. Now, don't cancel us. Don't cancel George. This is way before he ran for president. This show finished over 15 years ago. Anyway, George was one of the judges there. He was also the primary person that helped Trump build his brands. He was Trump's attorney and Trump's business coach when Trump went from just a real estate developer up into a multi-billionaire with multiple different types of investments, properties, and all that kind of stuff before the politics. Once Trump got into politics, George and him split their ways, and George hasn't worked with him really since. Now, George is 92. He's sharp as a knife. He's done some business coaching for me. Great guy. Looking forward to that episode. JT Fox is my day-to-day business coach. If you don't know JT's name, You may not, you may, but JT is going to be a billionaire pretty soon. He works with a lot of billionaires, but he runs multiple businesses. He runs multiple investment groups, as well as he has what would you call it? You would call it a training company, I guess. But he does events and training so that he spoke in front of thousands and thousands of people all over the world. Before the pandemic, he was doing 200-300 different speaking events a year worldwide. But more than that, he does a lot of business deals. I'm in his founders investment group, as about 150 others are. We do 6-7 deals a week. At least we evaluate 6-7 deals a week. It's very busy. What I really like about all that, though, is JT is very, very varied, and he's a great business coach, and he understands technology, and he was dead broke at 26. I think he's about 40, 41 right now. And, he's pushing to be a billionaire here in the next few years. So you'll get some great input from him. Okay, finally, Wayne Root also has a very popular podcast. Leans a little bit conservative, but we'll be hearing about his businesses and how he grew his companies. Okay, with that, we'll also have a lot of corporate guys. We'll have a lot of startup guys. So again, this is going to be a very varied podcast. It won't just be celebrities. It won't just be technical. It won't just be a bunch of marketing people talking about marketing campaigns. We're not going to quite go there. We really want to talk about how to deliver value in businesses and how to help the tech guys deliver it and how to help the business guys tell the tech guys what they need. Finally, we have tons of extra content available for you guys. So subscribe on our YouTube channel, subscribe on the podcast, obviously. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on the Instagram. I'm Jack Garzella on Instagram, but you'll also find us at TBAT, since they won't allow a name as long as the Business and Tech Podcast. So TBATP on Instagram, but you can also find us on, again, Facebook and the other social media channels. We'll have a lot of extra content there. We'll be doing deep dives off the podcast content. We'll be putting masterminds up there. We've got a .club up there with 5-minute to 15-minute quick hits. All that's being released through the end of the year. So you won't see all that there today, but there's sign-up lists to be notified when that content's available. Initially, it'll all be free. One day we might do some paid stuff, but for the first while and quite a while, it'll be free. We'll always have free content, by the way, even if we start charging for some of the half-day and multi-day masterminds and workshops and stuff, we'll always have free content out there for you guys. All right. And then finally, I've got a blog. The blog content will loosely align to the podcast. So you can also find that out on the jmgse.com site. So that's jmgsolutionexperts.com. JMGSE is the quick way to get to it. As always, I want feedback. Who should we interview? What topics should we cover? Your feedback, your perspectives on the topics we are covering. Interact with us. That would be great. Okay, so I'm done with this podcast. If you want to hear about my career more and what I did in the .com boom and some of the projects that I did, at least at a high to mid-level, I'll be doing a different podcast on that, more for background. People have asked me to do that. I'll have some funny stories in there and things like that. But you'll see a lot of our podcast content will be driven from people I've met in those processes, companies I've worked for, as well as struggles that I see day to day in my current consulting and aviation software experience. Okay, with that, thanks a lot, and we look forward to talking to you later.